lights
Do you want them up for a moment?
off for like an hour?
Absolutely.
Now, okay, the lights are out, so everybody behave themselves. So, okay, I always start out with a few questions. Who has been to my presentations before? You know, thank you, because quite often they don't come back. So, that makes me feel better about myself, and you always want to start out feeling good about yourself. Next, who has been to Machu Picchu? We have a couple. Who has been to Peru but didn't make it to Machu Picchu? Oh.
I think he did that.
We have one poor soul who is so close and yet so far. So I'm going to start out for those of you who have not been to one of my presentations. Introduce myself. For those of you who have, you're going to have to endure this again. My name is Joe Fahey, and from Belleville, where's Joe Fahey. I'm from the Belleville clan, not the Janesville or Fitchburg clan. And but that was 50 years ago, and since then I have been in the corporate world, and I live to tell about it, which is exciting. And as part of being in the corporate world, I've lived all over the country, and the last 20 years of my career I was responsible for international marketing for a Japanese company, and so I spent a lot of time in Japan and traveling all over the world. So I retired, and so I cut grass at the university for 2 summers. And boy, it doesn't do much for your mind. So I was really afraid or concerned about losing it. So I started going through all the pictures that I accumulated over the years. I thought, you know what, I could probably spin some stories and maybe get some people to show up and be bored to tears. So that's what I do now. So thanks for scratching that itch for me. And now, before we get started, I have to do a bit of shameless promotion. All right? Totally shameless. I should feel bad about it, but I'm not. My book published this week. And it was April 1st, but it's not April Fool's. It really did happen. This is a collection of short stories from my travels. In fact, there's a chapter in here on Machu Picchu. So if anyone is interested afterwards, I'll let you know how to buy one. Now, I want you to know that being an author, I don't know how they eat, because it is not a profitable venture. And we'll leave it at that. So anyway, that being said, I need my clicker, which I put somewhere. I think it looks a lot like this. And you have now survived the prelims. So let's get down to the issue at hand, which happens to be the lost city of Machu Picchu. And the emphasis here is lost, because for hundreds of years, Machu Picchu is kind of like Xanadu. What is Xanadu? Is it a myth? Is it a real thing? Is it a concept? Where is it? Same thing for Machu Picchu. It was, they talked about it, but nobody knew where it was. Did it even really exist? So we're going to talk about that. And as always, I start out with a geography lesson. And of course, it's in Peru, right? So it's in Peru, and to get a little more detail, it's outside of Cuzco. Cuzco was the capital of the Incan Empire, and so Machu Picchu is just that far away from Cuzco, which that far
on the map.
That last mile is really hard. And There's a reason why it was lost, okay? You ever hear the saying, can't get there from here? They were talking about Machu Picchu. So, always start out with some background context, and the question is, who were the Incas? And I want to give you the Incan Empire timeline. Now, I give presentations about the Roman Empire and the Egyptian civilization. You know, we're talking about thousands of years ago and lasting. The Egyptians were 3,000 years, Romans were 1,500 years. So this is relatively recent in the grand scheme of things. And so, you know, 1425, was it 1425? Maybe it's November of 1424. I mean, that's an approximation. So, I mean, you don't start an empire on one particular day. But anyway, that's about when it started. And in 1450, they started building Machu Picchu. Now, again, these dates, I hate to plant the seed of doubt about my own presentation, but you know, there was no written language, so you know, it's not like they had a calendar laying around. So these are approximate dates, but it pretty much tells you the picture. So 1450, they begin building Machu Picchu. In 1530, it was abandoned. It only lasted 80 years. Okay? Oh, but it gets worse. In 1532, Pizarro arrives. And we all know about the Spanish conquest of South America, the Aztecs in the northern part of South America and Central America. Pizarro was in the south, and it got pretty ugly. And then in 1533, he took Cuzco, and that was the end of the Incans. All right, so the empire only lasted 100 years. Yet we've all studied the Incans when we were in 5th grade or whatever that was in whatever age we were in grade school. So again, you look at the Egyptians and the Romans. This is only 100 years, and yet they accomplished so much, and that's a big part of the discussion today. Now, this is not a real picture of the Incans, okay? I went to my top secret source, the internet, and but this gives you an idea. This is part of a reenactment, but you know, the colorful robes and this is supposed to be Pachacuti. Pachacuti was the emperor of the Incan Empire who built, under his guidance, they built Machu Picchu. The Incans at that time were imperialists, and so their big thing was conquering and ruling. But it's kind of like I would tell people in my department at work, yeah, I'm a dictator, but I'm a benevolent dictator. And so they were the same way. They tried to incorporate various cultures into theirs. They weren't particularly heavy-handed, although sometimes they were. So anyway, they were also inclusive of other cultures and of females, and so they were the original DEI. Okay. Anyway, so the other thing I like about this picture is this is supposed to be Pachacuti, and I love his scepter because it's got the axe and the ear of corn. Now, it seems a little weird to have an ear of corn on your battle axe, but it also tells you the importance of corn in their society. So, one of the greatest accomplishments of the Incans during this period was their road system. And they built 15,000 miles of road for transport. So it goes all the way from the edge of Colombia all the way to the bottom of Argentina. So they're running all along the west side of the Andes. Absolutely incredible that they were able to accomplish this. And it's for communication, it's for the movement of troops and food and information. So they really, excuse me, accomplished a lot in that period. Now these are not 4-lane highways, okay? This is their concept of a road. Now, remember, we're running along the Andes here, so it's pretty challenging. But still, look at the amount of work that went into this. And okay, you just have to walk across this plank to keep going on the road. I mean, it's these guys had nerves of steel, and I'll show you more of this. It's not just this example, but this is the, you got to put the whole road concept into perspective. Yes?
Does that road go into the mountain and down, or how are you going?
No, it's along a cliff.
Okay.
So it's yeah, it's kind of bottomless here. So they just move along the cliff in this particular case. Now these aren't all that different from the fine folks in Bolivia that bring you the death road. I don't know if you heard about the death road. It's one lane along the side of a cliff. So there's a fair amount of this in South America. So and also, since when you have 15,000 miles, especially through the Andes, you're going to have to cross some rivers and some gorges. So you're going to need some bridges. And I saw an exhibition on how they make these bridges, and it's made out of dried grass. And it was pretty amazing how they did it. Now, first they go through it and cut the tall dead grass, and they'd start rolling it into, so they kind of connected and interwove amongst itself into kind of strands of rope, and then they would braid the rope, and then depending on, here's a single braid, and then they take several of those and braid these heavier ropes. I'm not quite sure how they made that first, got the first rope across. I'm thinking a kid is involved, but don't really know that for sure. But it's amazing how strong the bridge is, and the exhibit I saw. I mean, they pulled a donkey across on it, and it just made of grass. So pretty cool. These people were they had a lot going for them. Now, you're probably wondering, wow, 15,000 miles of roads and bridges, where'd that labor come from? Well, they didn't have a monetary system. And so what they would do is conscribe citizens to donate labor. And that was their, labor was their unit of money, let's say. So a tax, for example, if a tax is 20%, they'd have to spend 20% of their time on civil projects. So everybody had to participate. Okay, well, that's one way to do it. All right. So, that being said, we're going to talk about the rediscovery of Machu Picchu. And in all the different presentations I talk about, I make a point of saying rediscovery because it was already there. Somebody else discovered it first, so this is just coming back. Now, it was officially discovered by Hiram Bingham in 1911. And Hiram Bingham is an American historian, and he was purposefully following clues to find Machu Picchu. And when he got there, this is what he found. He has photographic evidence of his discovery. What he also discovered is that someone had been there earlier. And it's pretty well accepted that a German businessman had been there and plundered the place about 50 years earlier, didn't tell anybody about it. Now, Hiram Bingham was there for science, and he was there for positive reasons. So he is the official rediscoverer of Machu Picchu. But as you can see, it's on this crest of the mountaintop. But it's overgrown. I mean, you know, it's been 500 years, so that's what happens. But it's just an amazing. It's like, you know, like finding Xanadu. It's just absolutely amazing. Now, I was going through the pictures from Hiram Bingham, and this is a picture I took, and this is a picture that Hiram Bingham took. And so, kind of a coincidence, but you can see where, yeah, they replaced some stones and they shored up this, you know, a couple of areas, got rid of the overgrowth, but pretty much that's the condition that Hiram Bingham found. This is the Intihuatana, and it's a altar, sacrificial altar that's at a very high point in Machu Picchu, and so you can see where it's overgrown and the dress at the time. But I'll show you pictures in a bit of what it looks like now. Okay, so I told you can't get there from here. Well, you can get there from here, but first you have to fly into Cuzco, and Cuzco was the capital of the Incan Empire at the time, and now it's a city of over 1 million people, so it's a pretty big place, and its elevation is 11,000 feet, so it's way up there. And notice the clouds are, you know, to fly in, you've got to come in through these mountains, and you got clouds in there. It's a fabulous view as you're flying in. Now, you have to get there. You have to take a small local flight from Lima to Cuzco. Now, we all know the history of airline food, and it's not always the best. And in fact, a number of times people have said, you know what, airline food is just crap. Well, on this flight, they were right. You know, you open up the box and they say, hey, you serving me crap. I never did eat it, I took it home. I didn't want to surprise myself. So anyway, I had some crap on the way there. And so then, get off the plane and went to the hotel and checked into the hotel, and that was all fine. And the person working at the desk says, okay, you can help yourself at the table in the back of the room. So I said, great. It sounded like there's free stuff. I love free stuff. So I go over and I go, okay, what is it? So I got, you know, a bunch of leaves and some hot water and a cup and some sugar. And so fortunately I was traveling with Ricardo, who was from Ecuador, so he kind of knew the drill. And he goes, oh yeah, those are coca leaves. So that's for making coca tea. Okay, all right. So we sat there and we drank our coca tea. So now I had to look up, all right, so what's the deal with coca leaves? And the natives have been chewing on coca leaves for centuries, if not millennia. And allegedly, coca leaves give you more energy, they suppress your diet. I have found that it does not grow hair, but it's got all this tremendous medicinal value. Oh, and you can also make cocaine from it. So, well, that has a lot of value. And so of course, I'm checking my #1 source, being the internet, and coca leaves were banned in the U.S. in 1961. So it's a banned source. Okay, but the other big thing about coca leaves is that they highly recommend it for altitude sickness. And that's a big deal there. And typically, when you get off the plane, you know right away if you can handle the altitude or not. So I didn't have altitude sickness, but I did get a burst of energy, but did not get a burst of new hair. Anyway, that night we went to dinner, and the local talent was playing the pan pipes. Had never seen that before. You see they're in two different sizes, small and extra large, and it's like 20 bamboo pipes of different lengths. So that was pretty cool. And then we walked around the city square of Cuzco, and there are two cathedrals, and these were built by the Spanish, and they were conveniently built on top of the Incan temples. So that was part of the whole, we need to erase all memory, all history. The Spanish were very effective at eliminating the indigenous peoples. But they did have, in the center, there's a big fountain with a statue of Pachacudi. And that was good to see that they are honoring him. And you know, they got a little Iroquois on there. So, Machu Picchu today. Well, there's one way to get there. No, I take that back. There's two ways to get there. Number one, you're going to walk. And the walking trip is anywhere from 2 through 5 days, depending on how far you want to walk. And personally, I'm more of a train guy. So we took the train, and what happens is there's a train there in the morning, and it comes back late in the afternoon. That's it. And otherwise, you're walking. So it's a 4-hour ride on the train, and at that time, it didn't go all the way because there had been a storm that took out the tracks, and so a bus had to come to meet us. Now, that storm was years earlier. They just never got around to fixing it. And that's, you know, in South America, there's quite a bit of that. So now I've been told the train goes all the way now. So in case any of you plan on going to Machu Picchu, you don't have to worry about the train not going all the way. So there's a village at the base of the mountain, and this is the Urubamba River, and it's the village is referred to as Machu Picchu, or Aguas Caliente, which is hot springs. And so we got off the bus, and I was so glad to see that. You know, we had set up to have a tour of Machu Picchu with a local, and you pay for it in advance, and you just never know. But she was there waiting for us, and she was great. One of the beauties of this thing was when you have a local do it, you don't necessarily hear what's in the history books, and you know, you have to look at stories and lore, and you know, with kind of a really. So anyway, she was really good about that, giving the indigenous view of Machu Picchu. Now, so Machu Picchu is, I mean, this town was at the base of the mountain, and it's way up there, and it's right along the crest of the mountain. So you're looking straight down on both sides, and in order to get there, you got to get on the bus. And if you didn't have altitude sickness, you're going to get sick anyway, because it's just switchback all the way up. That's a rough ride. So you wonder, how the hell did they do that 500 years ago? I don't know. So Anyway, you take the road up, and then they drop you off, and you have this is the classic view. So when you see pictures of Machu Picchu, this is the view where you're overlooking the city. Excuse me. And this peak is called Huayna Picchu. Now, you can go up there if you want. They take two trips a day, two groups a day, if you want to be part of that. Now, there's a rub. This is how you get up there. And you'll never guess what the name of these stairs are. Stairs of death! Yeah! Who saw that coming? Oh, that's kind of a long drop. I don't know.
How far apart were those?
I didn't go, okay? Because I'm not dying. So now the 1400s was a few years before OSHA, okay? Because I think OSHA would have a fit with this. And I suspect there aren't too many lawyers in the area. So anyway, you have to go up these steps to get to the top of Huayna Picchu. Anyway, so Machu Picchu, here's an artist's rendering of what they think it looked like. Now, what was Machu Picchu? And basically, it was a retreat for the emperor. You know, being emperor, that's a hard job. You're making decisions, you're sacrificing people, you're just doing all this hard stuff, and sometimes you just have to get away. Now, Donald Trump can just get in his helicopter and go to Camp David. No, this is a 5-hour walk from Cuzco, but it was also a spiritual retreat, because there are a lot of temples here. But it was for the emperor to get away. There are 200 buildings here, or there were at the time. And at any one time, whenever the emperor was there, they estimate there are probably 750 people living there, between the religious and the supply people, and you gotta have a lot of servants when the emperor is there. So you see that the basic layout of Machu Picchu, these are all these stone walls. So the buildings are stone, thatched roofs, and there was an open area. So there was uptown and downtown. A lot of the residences were uptown, and downtown was a little more perfunctory, warehouses and servants. So that's kind of the layout. And then here is the opening, or the entrance to the walled area of Machu Picchu. So, excuse me. So now when you look at it, here's the layout. So here's the entrance that I pointed out, and you can see that there are quite a few temples. Principal temple, Intihuatana, is right here. Sacred Rock we're going to talk about. Temple of Three Windows. You've got, here's the palace, Temple of the Sun, Condor Temple, and then you've got this main square. So that gives you a sense of some of the places that I'm going to refer to. So, of course, the question is, how did they do this? And in order to build a city like that on the crest of a mountain, you would obviously you'd have to have some kind of math skills, and you'd need to have written instructions or some kind of writing. You'd need beasts of burden, certainly to move stones around. You'd need metal tools, and obviously you need the wheel. They had none of that. They had nothing. All right? So, for as much as they accomplished, they didn't have much to work with. And when you see the walls there, it's unbelievable. Look at these stones and how they neatly fit in with each other. That didn't happen naturally. So the question is, okay, so how did they do that? And this is just a close-up picture. Look at how perfect this seam is. You couldn't get a credit card in there. Unbelievable, the craftsmanship and the skill that they had in putting these stones together. They used hammer stones, all right? And so with hammer stones, you start out, when you have a big block of stone, you start out with a big one, and you just start whacking on it. And the large stone has more mass. And so that makes your arm really tired. And as you get closer and closer, or you want to get more and more detailed, you use a smaller and smaller stone. So there's less mass, it's knocking off less mass off the stone. And so then you keep beating on it until you have this perfect fit. So now the question is, how do you get the perfect fit? You saw that squiggly line that the stones fit in. It's pretty ingenious, actually. It almost looks like a divining rod. You know, it's just a Y piece of a branch. And notice they had figured out the plumb bob. So they knew perpendicular. And what they would do is put this surface on this point on one rock and this point on the other, and just go down between them. And they would, if there was ever something that was sticking out, take a hammer stone and knock it off till it was smooth, and until all the way down, the distance was perfect. And then they could just slide them together. Now, when you think about, not every building, you know, some of those were just stacked stone, but the temples, a lot of buildings had this construction type. And this is the process. And when you think about what little time they had, it's pretty amazing. Now, I watched a kind of a show about the Incans, and so they found this stone that had been left by the Incans, and the question was, and scientists, they come up with odd questions. I wonder how many guys it would take to move this thing. So the answer in this case was 240. Now, this guy isn't working too hard, so it could have been maybe 235. But anyway, it takes a lot of labor to move those stones. Now, once you get up there, they have a lot of temples, so it is very religious based. But they were also really good at celestial viewing. And they had a basic understanding of the cosmos. So you'll never guess what the name of this temple is. Temple of Three Windows. Come on, people. You can do better than this. So, surprisingly, there's 3 windows. But, you know, number one, it's a great view. But look at the construction, how they put this support stone in, and so they could put the beams overhead, beams being rock. And then, again, how tight the seams are. Pretty impressive, very impressive. Now this is Temple of the Sun. And a couple of things to notice here. First of all, this window is, and there's a rock here, and so it perfectly aligns on the June solstice between the sun shining on a rock in here. So they understood the equinox, they understood the solstice. And this is the only curved wall that's in Machu Picchu. But look at this. And when you look at it from the other side, it's an extension of a curved rock underneath. It's perfect. How did they do that? It's very impressive. Now this is the main temple, and it always had 3 walls, so it's not missing a wall. But it had 7 niches up top and then 5 down here for religious artifacts that they would keep in there. But notice it's separating a little bit. Machu Picchu is sitting on a fault. They didn't have it all figured out. And so that's why there was a fair amount of damage because of earthquakes. So, you know, that's just an inevitability. Now, this is sacred rock. Does anybody notice anything peculiar about sacred rock? Correct. Correct. It matches the outline of the mountain behind it. Now this rock is 10 feet high, 25 feet long, sitting on its edge with a perfect outline of the mountain behind it. Number one, who thinks of this? And number two, then who does that? And they do this with just hammerstones. Very, very impressive. All right, this one I don't get. This is the altar of the condor. And they go, oh yeah, see, it looks like a condor. I have not seen the condor yet. The only thing I can figure out is maybe this is the neck and beak? I don't know. I guess you have to have a more creative imagination than I do. But this was a sacrificial altar. And allegedly the Incans did some human sacrifice, not like the Aztecs. The Aztecs kind of went wild with that stuff. But when you look up on what kind of sacrifices they made, it said they sacrificed animals, dirt, and water. Wait a minute, they've got dirt everywhere. What kind of a sacrifice is that? I mean, it's like giving up dirt for Lent. Come on. Okay, there are some things that are just not meant to be understood, and that's one of them. Okay, so here's the Intihuatana, which I had mentioned earlier. Remember the picture from 1911, and they cleaned up all the overgrowth, and this was one of the main altars. So as you can see, it's huge stones that have been smoothed out, and then the Inti is the sun god. So this is the hitching post of the sun god, or hitching post of the sun. And you've got this portion sticking up, but it's not straight up. In fact, it's at 13 degrees. And so on the equinox, which is twice a year, it casts no shadow. Pretty impressive that they're able, and remember, they did this with hammerstones. And they figured out, oh yeah, about 13 degrees, that looks good. They didn't have numbers. You can't help but be constantly impressed with what was accomplished. Speaking of which, so you see a few of these 4-cornered stones. They're parallelograms, and apparently they were common throughout the empire at the time. Each one of these corners points to perfect north, south, east, and west. And here, a guy, not with us, but just to test it, he put his iPhone, and you can barely see it. It says 180 degrees. That's due south. So, once again, how did they do that? So they were very good at celestial observation and also directions. Okay, now here's one I'm not buying. Because I think this is from the tourism board. Because they say, oh, this is a water mirror. And when there's water in it, it reflects the stars and has some religious meaning. And I say, no, I think they ground corn in it. You know, come on. That's just my personal opinion, but I think there's a little bit of puffery there. Now, one of the wonders of Machu Picchu is the terraces. When you build a city right on the crest of a mountain ridge, one of the things you have to worry about is like maybe the hill falling down. They get 75 inches of rain a year. And so they have to figure out what to do with that rain, how to manage water. Managing water is a big deal. So they figured out that they need to build terraces to support the hill and to manage the water. Now, when you build terraces, you start at the bottom, and then you build your way up. And they built 700 terraces. And so, out of curiosity, and scientists always, you know, they always have to have something to do. So, so I said, gee, I wonder how they did this. And so they did a core sample, or multiple core samples, to figure out, you know, these have been here 500 years, so they must have done a pretty good job. And they built these exactly the way we would today. They laid down gravel, and they put sand on top of that, and then soil on top of that. That is exactly the right way, because the water goes through, and it disperses, and it maintains its integrity. So I have several pictures of the terraces, just to give you an idea. And you know, the further back you go, just the more impressive it gets. Now, okay, so here's another one that I'm not buying. So they say, well, you know, the terraces were used for growing crops because they had all these people to feed. Well, somebody had the brilliant idea of like numbers and measuring how much area is on these terraces, and it comes out to about 12 acres. Well, you can't feed 700 people on 12 acres. I mean, the numbers just don't. And by the way, there was a village on the other side of the mountain, and they think that's where a lot of the food came from. So that one got debunked. But again, you keep standing further back, and you get a better sense of just how much work just to stabilize the ground so that they could build Machu Picchu. And oh, by the way, I don't know if these are alpaca or llama. I think they're llama, but not sure. But anyway, that's they're indigenous to the area, and also alpaca is delicious. So had some alpaca the night before. Now, here's from a different view, and this is kind of from the angle of Huayna Picchu. But see, this is the crest. They had to build terraces on the other side too. It wasn't just the one side. They had to build on the other side. And then this is a quarry, and that's where most of the stone came from. So there was, you know, you have to ask, okay, so why did you pick this selection? Well, one is that there was building materials. There's a quarry there. And the other one is there was water. And we'll get to that. Speaking of water, there was a spring. Let me go back a bit. There was a spring up here, all right, off the screen. And so there was flowing water. Perfect. Now, how do you get it from there? This is from where the spring was down to here was 1,000-foot drop. Okay? So how do you manage that? I mean, waterfalls are gonna erode the land. And so they became experts at water management, and they built canals. And I'm talking about channels, not a huge canal like you would tend to think, but it's just small channels to manage the flow of the spring. And it was at a 3-degree slope, so it would gently come down, and then they had to drop it 1,000 feet. So they built these cascading waterfalls in steps. All right, so I'm going to show you this from a couple different angles. So you can see the water would collect here, and then overflow would drop down and collect here, and the overflow would drop down and collect here, and overflow. So it's these cascading steps. And this is from looking down from the other direction, and it's hard to see. But here's where the water collected, and here's where it came out and dropped down to the next one. And here's where it dropped down to the next one, and dropped down to the next one. And that's how they got it to drop 1,000 feet from the mountaintop. And so there was flowing water through Machu Picchu all the time. And it still is. 500 years later, it still works, and there's still water flowing in those canals. And here, see, this was just hammered out of the stones, and the water is still flowing. So this is the emperor's palace, and he had a pretty nice crib. He had the only 2-story place in town. You know, it's as they say, it's good to be king. And then this just gives you a sight of or a view of all the stonework that had to be done to make these walls. It's very, very impressive. Now, the big question is, what happened to Machu Picchu? Why was it lost to history? Why was it a lost city? Well, whenever there's a situation where we cannot understand what happened, there's always a clear answer. And it's aliens. You know darn well aliens were involved. And they had already built the pyramids, they were looking for something to do. But if you don't buy into that conspiracy theory, the next one is the Spanish. And that gets pretty easily debunked because, first of all, it doesn't fit exactly the timeline. And the other reason is when the Spanish would overrun a city, they destroyed everything. Nothing was left. And so Machu Picchu was still not whole because of decay, etc. But it clearly wasn't overrun by the Spanish. So that couldn't be. And this is where having the local guide was wonderful, and it was a sad story that she told, but totally believable. She said it was smallpox, and the Spanish had come in the north, and smallpox just ran rampant through South America. So it got there before, what's his name, did. And Pachacuti understood what happened as soon as there were cases of smallpox and the story goes, a party came back from the jungle and they brought smallpox with them. And Pachacuti made a very difficult decision. And what he said, or according to the indigenous understanding, is that for those of you who don't have smallpox, we're leaving. For those of you who do have it, you're staying. So he created a quarantine. And for those people who left with him, he told them, you will never speak of Machu Picchu again. And they didn't. The Spanish never found out about it. It was lost to history. And they, I mean, they had no writing, so it's not like you could find a book about it or any like the Dead Sea Scrolls. So what happened was, because of smallpox, they had to shut it down and erase it from history. And they did a very good job. I mean, on both fronts. Now, unfortunately, their empire was destroyed a few years later, but it wasn't because of smallpox. So that's the sad end of a very short story, short but colorful story of Machu Picchu. Have any questions? Yes?
Can you tell us about altitude sickness? Who gets it, and what's involved, and what can you do to avoid it, or is there something you can take? Okay,
Well,
tell us.
as soon as you get off the plane, you know if you have it,
Why?
because you get instantly sick.
Like throw up sick, or
Throw up sick,
passing out
yes.
sick, or
Yes,
something?
throw up sick. It's kind of like flu, and you're dizzy. Yeah, dizzy. It's bad.
and-
There's no. I wonder if I have it.
Okay, so and then what do you do?
You get a whole bowl of coca leaves.
It works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seriously?
It's worked for 1,000 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do they serve that up right there at the
Well,
tarmac?
I didn't see a coca leaf kiosk at the airport. Yeah, of course, I wasn't looking for it either. I was kind of surprised when I got to the hotel, so it might have been there and I missed it. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, and they go through the whole list of medicinal value for coca leaves, and they say it's flu and altitude sickness. Now, one I didn't mention was sexual vigor, but you know.
But if you're throwing up, that sounds a little.
Yeah, then it's kind of pointless. Anybody else? Yeah.
Yeah, can you speak to the current state of the village at the base? Because we talked earlier about
Yeah, okay.
over-tourism, and I know that a lot of that had been built up to handle the trains and lodging and things like that. And did they not also have some severe flooding that damaged that area and took out a lot of buildings?
Don't know about the flooding. Could very well be, because you see the Urubamba. I could see where, boy, if they got a big rain on the mountains, that would be a problem for the city. There have been a couple of issues in that, just like Europe and everywhere else, there's over-tourism, and they're concerned now. Now, the good news is they can control it by the capacity of the train to a certain degree. But another issue that they've had recently was there's been political unrest. And that's always a kind of a concern when you're in Latin America. And they shut it down for a while, not too long. But it, obviously the government can't afford to have Machu Picchu shut down, because that's a big source of revenue. So, yeah, I've heard that it's really become overly popular, like most places have. Thanks for bringing that up. I really appreciate you spending an hour with me, and it's been a lot of fun. So, thank you.
Thank you.